Today we're here with Tina Rucci. Am I pronouncing that right? Of the ARC. She is what's the term here? The policy director? Am I saying that
Public
right?
Policy Director at the
Public
ARC
policy
Minnesota.
director. First of all, congrats. That's awesome. To just kind of give the audience a little bit of a background, could you tell us about your experience with this, your background, academic experience, if applicable, and kind of how you ended up working for the ARC?
Yeah, so um, hi everyone, I'm Tina Rucci, Public Policy Director at the ARC Minnesota. I've been in this role for about a year and a half. I'll back up a little bit and talk about my professional and academic history. I have my undergrad in sociology and anthropology. I spent the first couple of years of my professional career working in case management and direct service. So that led me to kind of view that led me to have a view of systems from the inside. And I would often be able to see how the programs that I was working for didn't really meet people where they were at. So I wanted to work in systems change. So I ended up getting my master's in peace and justice studies from the University of San Diego. That program really focused on addressing social issues through a systems change lens. When I moved back to Minnesota, that's how got started in public policy. So this will be my seventh legislative session. I worked on health policy at the Wilder Foundation and worked on policy at Greater Twin Cities United Way, and then moved on to the ARC, like I said, about a year and a half ago. Um, and that's just my background in a nutshell.
Well, thank you for that. That's amazing. I think we're lucky to have someone like you advocating for just the common sense rights of everyone. Could you give the viewers a little bit of a background about like what the ARC does, maybe their origins and history?
Yeah, so the ARC has been around for 75 years. We are
Wow.
currently a national organization. I don't recall how many chapters we have, but we are in every state, and I'm proud to say that the ARC started here in Minnesota. So,
Wow.
75 years ago, it really was just a group of parents who had children with disabilities sitting around a table saying, we need to do something about this system, and we're going to start advocating for change. And they did, and like I said, grew into a national organization. Um, and we've been happy to celebrate our 75th anniversary this year.
Wow. Congrats. That's actually amazing. I didn't even know. It just
So, so we specifically advocate for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, but it's not our work really isn't limited to that. It's really we we like to say that all policy is disability policy, so that includes special education, transportation, housing. We're really trying to change the narrative, especially my job is really to try to change the narrative up at the Capitol that disability policy lives in the human services committees. And we want to make sure that people with disabilities can live full lives and that policies show up in each and every committee that will positively impact people with disabilities.
it's amazing. I guess we can kind of start digging into it. Would you mind going over some of the history of the sub minimum wage, why it exists, who created it?
Yeah, so I will say that this issue is the thing that I'm the most passionate about in our work here at the ARC. So if I start to get too much in the weeds, Jacob, you're going to have to pull me back out.
Go
Um,
off by all means.
okay. Um, so the history of subminimum wage is, I believe, in 1938, it was created as a way for World War I veterans returning home who either had, PTSD or an intellectual disability or physical disability from the war they were often unable to find employment. And so this was a way for companies to incentivize companies to hire them. And, back then, a lot of the jobs were factory based. And so employers did not really have an incentive to hire people with a disability because of the lack of productivity. And so this was a way to incentivize employers and say, please hire these vets. You don't have to pay them minimum wage because we know they're not as productive. Um, so that's how it started. And since then, we don't really rely on those types of jobs anymore. And also, we've, I think, come to realize that that's unjust regardless. Um, Does that kind of answer the question? I feel like there's been a lot of advocacy between 1938
Hmm.
and today. And I don't want to skip over all of that, but that's kind of where it started and then like where we're at today. Is that helpful?
Yeah, and I can add to that too, maybe. FDR had a huge hand in that, along with his Secretary of Labor, Frances Perkins, who, by all means, is a badass woman who quite literally firsthand witnessed the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire. So she's watching those women jump out the window to their deaths, and went from that to, you know what, let's fix this right into the weeds. And
I
I
actually
very much admire that because that took guts to
I just
be
listened to a
the
podcast about her. Jacob, I'll have to send it to you after you maybe have already heard it, but I just listened to a podcast about her and she is pretty badass.
yeah. So I might make a video about the paper I wrote about her and everything about this. Obviously, I am not an expert. I am still very much learning, and I'm not going to claim to be an expert. I am just very passionate about this cause. And yeah, I mean, overall, I think that kind of covers the intro of where that came from. I guess we could move on to, do you think 14C is a vestige of a bygone time? In my opinion, it feels like it's a tool that used to have a clear purpose, kind of as you brought up, of helping, differently abled vets get employment and maintain employment, to possibly being perverted to something that just helps people, how do I, for lack of better words, just gain personal profits potentially at
Yeah,
the
so
exploitation of a marginalized group. Just my opinion. I definitely think there's a lot of credibility to that statement, though.
one of the arguments, and I know this is in one of your later questions, but one of the arguments that we hear is, well, what if this helps people with disabilities get their foot in the door um, as far as employment goes, just, starting out employment. And I think that was one of the goals originally. However, there is data that shows that that's not really what's happening. So if the goal
Mm.
is to say, well, why don't you start out, this is your first job, you're working with a disability services provider who's putting you in a sub-minimum wage job with the goal of getting you into a full wage job later on. Like if that's the goal, we're not seeing data that that's happening. And so to your point, it is outdated. And if it's not working, we need to fix that.
Hmm. Yeah, one of the things I learned in my research too, that one of the easiest ways to kind of help with this employment and do away with 14C is encouraging the facilitators that work with the person seeking a job and the employer to find a good match that actually works for them, so that you don't have an employer that has this negative preconception. And that's what it is, in my opinion, of differently abled employees. I have a
Well,
friend that personally was easily able to find a job with a pretty well-known employer in the Midwest that we all know and love, and they started out above the minimum wage and are already looking at a raise. And I think that's a
yeah,
great example that already goes against the status quo of these people should be grateful to just work for pennies. Like, I don't think that's very humanizing, to say the least.
I completely agree. And what you're talking about, there's a phrase for it in the disability advocacy community, customized integrated employment. And so basically, if somebody is working with a disability services provider, the goal should be to find that individual something that works well for them. Um,
Hmm.
if I was sitting down at a table for however many hours a day, putting matches and matchsticks and match boxes, like I wouldn't be good at that either. I would not everybody has different skill sets, and we should be able to find them. Um, and ensure that, you know, people's abilities and um, qualities and skills are being met. So we do really promote customized integrated employment at the ARC.
Yeah, and that's customized integrated employment.
Hmm.
Just want to reiterate that term. Good
Like
thing to learn.
and for example, like I'm really good at my job because I'm a good strategist. I wouldn't be
Hmm.
good at my brother's job. He's a auto body technician. I would hate that. Like I
Yep.
would not be good at that. So the customized integrated employment is really important, and people should have a say in the types of work that they're doing, even if they're going through a disability services provider.
100%. I mean, that's the whole basis of like going to college and getting specialized education in the criteria, excuse me, in the field that you know you're going to need the right criteria for.
Hmm.
It's just specialized education for specialized employment. I mean, it's something that we all deal with, literally. Um, could you help me? And this is something I personally was kind of struggling to understand, so I'd love more information. But how does 14C relate to SSI? I one of the arguments that I've seen is, is it better to be paid less and keep SSI or be paid more and then be more self-sufficient?
Well, so that's a tough one. And I don't know that I can fully speak to it because I don't know a ton about SSI. However, I can say that everybody's situation is going to be different.
Hmm.
The amount of hours you work, what wage you're getting paid. If it's just minimum wage, it might not impact your SSI. Like everybody's situation is going to be different. But at the ARC, we do really believe that people should be able to make minimum wage or higher and also live independently. And if that's impacting people's benefits, then that's maybe another conversation with another solution. But the goal for us is really to eliminate 14C and also ensure that everyone can live independently in their home
Yeah.
if that's what they want.
Yeah, right. You're just encouraging them to have more opportunity and freedom to do what they want ultimately. In my research, someone quite eloquently referred to SSI as golden handcuffs. And I it's kind of diabolical, but is it wrong? If
Well,
you
and like I said, that might be another conversation with a different solution, potentially
Mhm.
unrelated to 14C.
Right. I think it definitely is possibly indicative of a larger issue that 14C just kind of scrapes the surface of. I mean, it's a factor of it, but in looking into this, there's some pretty devious, horrible things that differently abled people have had to suffer through in terms of not having the freedom of finding their own home. And then if they couldn't, since they can't find their own home, they get stuck into like I don't know the correct term, kind of like some form of group home where several people live in, and they don't have the freedom of choosing when they're eating, where they're eating, and a bunch of other freedoms like when they can leave and actually just be a normal human. And you know, you're kind of a stone's throw away from basically incarceration at that point. I mean,
I
I
would
hate to
say
go
I
so
would say
far,
more
but
I would say more like reinstitutionalization. And of course we got rid of institutions in the 80s, and now we have the ADA.
mhm.
But if a group home is the best um, setting for someone to live in, and that's what they choose, then that's their choice. But
Mhm.
if there's ways for people to live on their own, if that's what they want, that's what we're always going to promote.
Right. And that's what I'm advocating for here too, is I learned that a lot of people actually didn't have a choice. And at the end of the day, people should definitely have a say and choice in what they do with their own life.
Can I back up to, I just remembered there's one more thing I wanted to say about one of your earlier comments
Yeah, of course.
regarding employers. So the way that 14C works is it's the disability services provider that hold the certificate, not the
Hmm.
employer. And so
Okay.
when a person with a disability works with a 14C disability services provider, then that provider is contracting with employers. And it's like I said,
Mm.
it's often, or actually I can't remember if I said this or not yet, but it's often the provider working with one employer and sending everyone to that same employer. Now, that's problematic because of what we were saying before. Not everybody has the same skill set. And it's also problematic because oftentimes employers don't know that the provider is paying the individuals less than minimum wage.
Really?
For
Whoa.
example, providers can negotiate a contract with an employer that says, we're going to send you this many employees. $16 an hour. And then the provider pays, let's just say, for example, the average 14C wage in Minnesota is around $4. So they pay the individuals $4 an hour and they keep that extra money as an administrative cost.
Oh, jeez.
And employers don't always know that. And sometimes when they learn that, they say, well, we need, they're surprised and they're like, we didn't want to pay anybody less than minimum wage. And they'll initiate a renegotiation of contract. And so the, to me, one of the solutions here is providers need to renegotiate contracts with the employers that they're working with because any business model that is set on that has a foundation in paying people less than minimum wage is not a good business model.
Yeah, I call that exploitation.
And, and I don't want to, you know, start a fight with the providers. We appreciate the work that they all do, but we do feel I and the ARC feel strongly that people should be getting paid minimum wage or higher.
Yeah, I mean, and I can maybe say more things since I'm, not professionally affiliated in that sense and say that clearly no human alive in this nation can live off of that. Just
Right.
period. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. That's shocking. That's just depressing, honestly. Um, if you don't have more to say about that, we can continue on.
Yeah,
Um,
let's do that.
I'd love to know what happens to these employers in states that got rid of 14C, because one of the arguments they always say is, if we can't use it, you're going to be out of a job, we'll be out of a business. They kind of, and for lack of better words, I'm not trying to say this, but this is an experience I even had in researching this and calling some of these employers is they kind of hold it over your head, for lack of better words, or it would seem that they are the entire employment opportunity itself.
So I can't speak to that last part that you said, but I can speak to the other states.
Hmm.
I believe 16 states in have phased it out and have been successful. There's data to show, and I could pull this data and follow up with you if that's helpful. I don't have numbers off the top of my head. I'm not really a numbers person.
Yeah, if you want,
Um,
I could always paste it over the video too, so people see that while we chat.
okay. Um, so there's data that shows that providers did not have to close as they claim they would, um, and that employment numbers are up. So
Oh, cool.
it takes time, of course, for a provider to transition away from one model to a new model, and that's okay. Like we're not opposed to giving grace, and actually, the ARC was
Hmm.
instrumental in getting some technical assistance and grant money passed in, I believe, 2023 in the state of Minnesota for 14C providers who did want to phase out. But yeah, speaking to other states, it it has shown to be successful. Um, The other thing that I will say, this is a bit of a side note, but the other thing that I will say about other states is that it's been passed, the phase out of 14C has been passed in blue and red states. Now, for some reason, it's become a very partisan issue here in Minnesota, with the majority of Democrats wanting to phase it out and the majority of Republicans wanting to keep it. Um,
Hmm.
I don't want to say too much more about that because I think it'll be some personal speculation. But
Yeah.
that's just the political landscape when it comes to this issue.
Yeah. And maybe I could just globalize the perspective on that. One of the things I mentioned in my research was that, you know, doesn't matter what your politics are, one bad accident and we could all end up in this position. I mean, truthfully, even with age, everyone ends up in different levels of ability with simply age. I mean, imagine if this was many years ago and we didn't have glasses. I would be blind. I'm gonna be honest.
Same. I can't see anything without it. My eye doctor actually told me that I would be legally blind if glasses didn't exist. So
Yeah. So this, hopefully people listening to this realize how close to home this could be in just one bad accident, one car accident. You
right,
know.
and I mean, God forbid, like I would never wish that on anybody, but the
Mhm, yeah.
disability community is really the only marginalized community that anyone can join at any time. Um, so it, I think empathy is pertinent here.
100%. And the answers you gave about what's happened in places that have phased it out, that they answered everything actually, so that's great. Um, to wrap it up, I guess I don't have, this is probably my last question. How can the viewers support the cause? You know, obviously we live in the age of everyone's tweeting stuff, making Facebook posts, but that's not enough. So I mean, outside of having a constituents meeting, which is what I recommend to everyone, you have the right to do that. Reach out to your representatives, and request that they meet with you. They gladly will over Zoom even, and let them know your thoughts. But what more can people do? Can they donate to the Ark? Can they, create some sort of rally that kind of raises funds for these people and give it to the Ark or other nonprofits? I know there's other groups in Minnesota specifically, but I know there's more nationwide.
Yeah, so definitely reach out to your legislators. They love to hear from their constituents. I can go up to the Capitol and knock on everybody's door, but they definitely prioritize constituent feedback. And then you can become a member of the ARC. There's a free option, or if you want to pay to become a member, you also can. But there is a free option, and that way you're just able to, get our newsletter, get event invites, stay up to date on everything that we're doing, and also it provides an opportunity to weigh in on our work, our legislative work. Um,
Mm,
and I would say, so that can be found on the ARC website. And then the ARC also leads a coalition of other sta partners, community partners, and nonprofits who are engaged in this work. It's called the Minnesota Coalition for Disability Wage Justice. And so, actually, Jacob, I should tell you, we're trying to change the narrative a little bit too and stop calling it subminimum wage and just
okay.
talk about wage justice because that really is more of like an asset-based way to talk about it.
Okay.
Um, and so, and we want to make sure that people know it's a labor issue. So wage justice is kind of the new terminology we're trying to go with. I'll let you respond to that and see if you have feedback. But those are ways to get involved. And feel free to give out my ARC email. People can always reach out if they have
Sure.
more questions or want to get more familiar with the issue.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I can even put it in the YouTube video. I don't know if that's too public or not. Up to
Uh,
you.
I mean, it's on the website. No, I
True, true.
and there's nothing I love more than talking about policy, particularly this. I mean, I don't love talking about this issue, but like I said, it's the thing I'm the most passionate about.
Yeah. Um, I guess with that all being said, is there anything else you want to say? I mean, you have the floor. I'd love to just learn more about everything.
I think that's it. I will put a plug for Disability Advocacy Day at the Capitol. I don't know that we have a date set, but if viewers want to follow the ARC, we'll be posting about that when we get closer to the legislative session. So that's just a big rally that you can attend. There's usually about 300 to 500 people in the Capitol Rotunda. Gives an opportunity for disability advocates to just join together and raise momentum and education. We usually have legislators join us and they'll speak. Um, yeah, it's a really good day, and I think with a lot of these issues, we're kind of talking about the problem and then the solutions, and it's nice for us to just gather together and celebrate each other. So,
Hmm.
Disability Advocacy Day, I'll keep you posted on the date.
Yeah, once I know, I'll update the video so everyone knows too. That's
Okay.
great. Well, I guess that's it. I really appreciate the time. Hopefully we can chat again about other issues in the future. I'd love to have you on, and if anyone has any comments or questions about other issues that we should chat about, let us know. Yeah. Well,
That
thank you.
sounds great. Thanks so much.